One of the things I really like about Jennifer and what she does is she works with organizations that are really at that transitional point where they're moving from, I think we need to do this, to actually doing that. And one of the big areas that we're hearing a lot about at conferences this fall, and we'll be talking a lot here at Recruiting Innovation Summit about, is on talent communities. Would you like to talk a little bit about what you're doing around that?
Sure. I think, I am out speaking a lot at conferences and with corporate clients. And while there's a lot of talk about talent communities and employment branding in the recruiting space with, the group of, for lack of a better word, thought leaders, there's still a lot of confusion or unsureness about how to proceed with either starting a talent community or how to go about using social recruiting tools for employment branding, et cetera. So there's still, I think, a lot of work to be done. A lot of the bigger companies are still haven't figured it out either. So it's not just a big or small company thing. There's still a lot of people out there that have heard these words, talent communities, employment branding, but they don't necessarily know what that means yet.
I agree. It's something that I get a lot of questions about and I hear about just like you do, and from companies of all sizes. Do you think it can really work at any company size, or do you think they have to be a large, 10, 15,000 employee company to make a talent community work?
I think it certainly would help. I mean, obviously, to have more interaction and to have a true talent community where both the people within the community as well as representatives from the company and employees are interacting, obviously it's going to be a larger organization or an organization that attracts a larger following. But a smaller company could have, a free talent community on some social sites out there where they don't have to do something big and they can capture, 50 or 100 people who may be interested in careers at their company, and that can be kind of a quasi-talent community where they're able to interact and share information.
Great. So do you have one or two tips that you can give to somebody that was considering this and where they should at least start at in the process?
Sure. I advise clients and when I speak to groups, certainly start with some sort of strategy, at least a thought process about how you're going to proceed, and not get hung up on numbers or ROI. And I like to say, it's the evolution of communication, and we are not providing ROI for the phone or for email. So look at it that way. Set some goals for building engagement, building awareness of the brand, and then you can set some goals for things that you can measure once you actually start to invest more than just time in the tools.
Great. And that's a really important tool that I think we're starting to talk about a lot more, is analytics and the use of analytics in recruiting. For a long time, we looked at metrics like time to fill and numbers around the hire without looking at the quality or the other sourcing techniques that we were using and how well those were actually working. What do you suggest to companies now? If a company comes to you and says, we're trying to decide what metrics to use, and here's all the traditional ones, but what should we really be looking at now?
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned source of hire, because I actually find with clients, especially the ones that call me and say they're having trouble recruiting, many of them are not even looking at the basics like source of hire. So that's usually a first step. Are we measuring the source of hire, where we're getting our applicants from, and then our actual hires, where are we getting those from, and measuring the quality of those hires against either the social recruiting tools or the actual tools that we're using to recruit those candidates. So again, I'll back up and say that a lot of companies aren't doing that today.
Right.
The ones that maybe are measuring source of hire are a little mixed up, and they're counting their career site as a source.
Right.
And they need to figure out how people got to the destination, which is their career site.
One of the other things that I find that people are coming up with is that when they're looking at sources of hire, they think it's going to be a long, drawn-out process, and most of them don't even realize it's already in your system. It's typically in most applicant tracking systems that are out there, especially the larger systems, but most of the smaller systems include that too. So along with that many analytics are included in most of the systems to look at.
Right. Important to look at that, though.
So excellent.